Good morning and welcome back to another video. This is the first in a series of videos previewing the 2024-2025 season. And I thought this season, instead of doing it all disjointed and not disjointed, sorry, in one big massive video, what I'd actually do instead is break it down into big sections. I'm going to talk about transfers and squad depth and tactics and the rivals and predictions all in separate videos. Because I think it's going to make it more interesting to get more voices on this as opposed to me waffling on for an hour on my own. And I don't think there's any better place to start this season preview than with my good friend, Mr. Ahsan Naeem from the 9320 podcast, talking about the transfer window. Ahsan, how are you doing, my friend? You good?
I'm very good. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. I can't wait for this season. I'm really up for this season. I don't know why. It's just got under my skin. I don't know why, but it has. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, same. I think I'm quite excited about the kids. I'm quite excited to see Oscar Bob, see Rico Lewis take another step in his development. Interested to see what James McAtee can do over the course of the season. I think Pep's really talked him up, and I think that's Pep doesn't really do that. And so if he's gone out of his way to talk somebody like McAtee up, you think that they'll get minutes. And then obviously Savinho's come in, who even in the tiny little cameo that we saw in the Community Shield, he looks like he's going to be a player. So no, there's quite a bit to be excited about. And I don't know, I'm ready for 5 in a row, basically.
I love it. Yeah, no, I was thinking about it, and what gets me excited is if there's narratives and you see signs of a change. And obviously, I'll talk about this in another video massively. But when you look at the kind of players that, only Savinho, but the kind of players that we got now in the squad with the wingers and all that kind of stuff, and you see that the young lads might get a chance. I feel like this season could be very, very different. Very different. I feel like we're going to see a really explosive football from Manchester City. And I've got a feeling it could be quite exciting watching these young players find themselves. And Pep, I feel like might be quite reinvigorated. And I get the sense he's enjoying preseason. I get the sense he's enjoying working with these lads. And to me, a happy Guardiola tends to make for a good Manchester City Football Club. And I don't know, feels like there's something in the water. I feel like there's a bit of energy, and it's not tangible, but I can feel it anyway. So to here today, anyway, talk about the transfers. I thought you'd be a great shout to get on with this because obviously me and you've had a billion transfer chats, mate. And I can't wait to get your opinions on this. So let me quickly do a little bit of editing to get the graphics up. 1 second.
Oh,
there we go. I mean, that wasn't the smoothest thing in the world, but we're here anyway. And this is a summation of Manchester City's transfer window so far. So what we're going to do, I think we should start with the transfers out. Of course, we've lost Julian Alvarez for around 95 million euros, which is a club record fee. Jan Kuts has gone for around 30 million, obligation to buy, but around that. Gomez, I think, was around 9 million euros, and Howard Bellis for 20 million pounds with the option to buy. What have you made of the exits so far this summer?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Couto, Gomez, Howard Bellis, pretty expected.
Yeah.
I think Issa Kabore will also end up going for 15, 20 million quid, something like that. Liam Delap's not gone on a permanent move, has he? He's on loan at Ipswich. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I haven't put him down.
Yeah, I think he's on loan, so I don't think that's a permanent one. And then look, I guess the headline is Alvarez, which.
No, they signed him for 20 million. I should have put that on there, to be fair.
Well, there you go.
So I'll update
that. There's another one. I mean, we are definitely winning the Nets Ben trophy. There's no question about that. Now, look, I think if you start with Alvarez, I can see why he wanted that move. I can see why Diego Simeone would want him. I think the fee is pretty outrageous. I guess I'm in the minority where I really like Julian Alvarez. I think he's a really honest, hard-working player who has done really well for City. But I wouldn't class him as a 95-100 million euro footballer. Not for me. And so to be able to get that sort of fee does feel a little bit like we've finessed Atletico Madrid a little bit. But also we are in that position of strength where he signed a new contract last summer. So he had many years left on his deal. And if you buy him from City, you're going to have to bring the money. and we seem to year on year get better at selling players. So I think in the end, it'll be a deal that will suit all parties because Alvarez was never going to play ahead of our Haaland.
Yeah.
I can completely understand why he wants to play as a number 9. I don't think he's versatile in the way that Pep tried to use him last season. I think that it almost did him a disservice playing him as a 10 or as an 8. He wasn't terrible at it, don't get me wrong, but also when it was bad, it looked really bad. And it sort of, I don't think he's got the technical level to play those roles for a team like City. So all in all, I think it's a deal that really suits all parties.
Yeah, no, I agree massively, and I think it is a really good fee. There's no doubt. I thought it'd be a lot less than this, and being honest, I expected around 80 million euros, something like that. And I think City have got a really good deal. I understand why Atletico have gone there. I've got a feeling they feel like he'll be could get 25 goals a season for them. And in this market, you don't really turn your nose up at a fee like that. And once again, he sort of is a potential superstar. You know, he's very marketable young lad, handsome young lad. Got a lot of trophies and all that kind of stuff. I can totally imagine, you know, in a few years from now, he's had 3 or 4 25 to 30 goal seasons potentially, and you're looking at, you know, a guy who's seen as one of the best strikers in world football, and they go, well, that was justified, the money that we spent. It is a little bit of a gamble because, you know, he's been a backup and all that kind of stuff, and there isn't really any proof yet that he could get 25 to 30 goals, but he hit 19 last season for Manchester City in all competitions. I know City created a lot of chances, he was a part of that, but I do think ultimately, I think I don't think he'll be a failure for them. The level of success will be interesting, but I can't see him doing anything other than scoring a whole bunch of goals. He's too predictable, and I mean that not in a negative way. He is what he is. You know, I don't think there's much more to Alvarez than you get on the cover, and I mean he's going to score goals. He's going to work hard, and he could get better as he gets older. He could get a little bit smarter, a little bit cuter in his movement and his experience. And yeah, I think he'll do well under Simeone. So, and I think City, look, that fee is ridiculous. 5 times the amount that they pay for him, you know, a massive influx of money. The lap should be there, of course, and people mentioned that Michael Hamilton will be here. So when this video goes out on the YouTube channel eventually, there'll be an updated graphic on there. But that's, you know, there's another 25 million there between Delap and Michael Hamilton as well. But Alvarez, look, the thing about Alvarez is that it potentially leaves us a hole in the squad. We'll get onto that in a little bit. Gomez, yeah, I mean, personally, I wish him well. I think it's a good move for him to go to Real Sociedad. I genuinely think he might turn out to be a pretty good player. You know, not City level, but a good footballer, and I think he'll find his home over there. Jan Couto, I was of the opinion personally, I don't think he's quite Manchester City level, and I think this is another good move. I think he's found his level at Dortmund or something like that. What about yourself?
He's just, I read somewhere he's like 5'4".
He's a small boy.
He's little, and I know that Rico Lewis has kind of defied expectations in his ability to play fullback and maybe not be the biggest or the most athletic guy. But for me, that's a really great deal to get 30 million euro for a lad who's never kicked a ball for you, who you're not really sure is gonna make it at your club. I think it's a really good deal for us. But I also think technically he's such a good player, and he had such a good year at Girona last year that I think it's a deal for Dortmund as well. I think in the end they're going to feel like they got value from it. It's a little bit like the Alvarez thing where I think it genuinely suits all parties, because I think that he'll do really well for Dortmund. He'll fit into their style of play and their system. I expect that we've got some sort of sell-on clause as well when that deal becomes permanent, because I can see a world in which in 2 or 3 years he's moving again to a bigger club. And City are taking a chunk of that fee as well.
No, absolutely. City aren't stupid. They know how to. They know how to invest in the future, don't they, that way? And I think Couto is, it's the right move for him. I think this is absolutely the level where we'll see if he's ready to take that next step, because Dortmund is such a good finishing school. You know, obviously Bellingham, Haaland, and all the others that have left there over the years. We won't mention Sancho. I still maintain the Sancho thing. He's messed his career up. He could have been so much better. I still think he's a very good footballer. But anyway, I think it makes an awful lot of sense. I think Couto, look, he's tiny. And I feel like if you're going to be tiny, you've got to have something that's absurd in some category, be it immense skill, an incredible crosser, or lightning quick. And I don't think he's any of them, or insane football IQ like Rico Lewis. Rico Lewis has got a chance because his IQ and his touch is just absurdly good. Whereas I think Couto is he's good going forward. He's got a decent pace, and he's a good passer. But I don't think he's brilliant at anything. We're not talking about, if this was a Dani Alves level technical ability, he'd be in this Manchester City side already, despite his height. But he's not a genius. And I feel like ultimately, if you're going to be the slightly smaller side as a footballer, you're going to have to be a genius in some way to get through it. And people talk about Philippe Lahm being small, but he's a genius. Alves wasn't the biggest, but a genius. Roberto Carlos wasn't the biggest, but he was a physical freak and a genius. So that is the level, basically, isn't it? So I think Couto, you never know. He could get better and better. It's a good move for him. And Howard Bellis, it's just great business again for Man City, isn't it? Like, I'm sure there's a buyback there. I think there is. 20 million to a newly promoted club. It's just, I wish him all the best. I think he's a really smart footballer, and do not be surprised in 2 or 3 years if someone's trying to sign him and he's in the England team as well, because I think he's a really good footballer. Onto the players that could be leaving. Phillips, Cancelo. Is there any chance of a Phillips come back, or is he gone?
No, I think he'll be. I think both of those will be gone in the next week, 10 days. Or maybe Phillips will go all the way till the end of the window, but he'll definitely go. Like, I don't see a world in which he stays, and I see no world in which João Cancelo stays at City.
No chance.
I'm actually surprised that it's got to the stage where he was back at the CFA training. I thought that they would have. I thought they maybe would have just gone, we're going to get this done before the players report back. But no, he'll definitely go.
He's got leaving on a free in a year or two written all over him, in my opinion, Cancelo. Like,
mate, I think his contract is really long. Like,
is it? Like 27 or something like that?
I think there might still be 3 years left to run on that horrible João Cancelo contract.
I'm going to Google it right now out of curiosity. So last time, so in 2022 he signed a 2-year extension, but that was an extension. 2027.
There you go, mate. Do you know what I mean? He's got 3 years left on that deal.
That's gone badly, hasn't it? Ugh. It just reminds you how good it was going until that moment. It was literally only several months early that he signed the contract, and then everything imploded, and that's football, isn't it? That's a disaster, but that's no, you'll end up going for 5-10 million somewhere or something like that when there's a year left, which is a shame given the player his quality.
Although I have read, and it does sound like City are quite adamant that they want him gone permanently this summer.
Okay.
And so I do think that there's a world in which it ends up being a loan with an obligation to buy at Barcelona. I think I've read somewhere that City are prepared to take 20 million euros next summer. So a loan with an obligation to buy probably is the most likely scenario for him.
It's very affordable for pretty much any decent team, and he's definitely worth it. A happy Cancelo is 3-4 times the amount of that in terms of value. But it is what it is on that front. I think there's been other players left. Ben Knight, of course, not really worth mentioning. The young lad gone to Murcia. Good luck to him, and obviously Callum Doyle joined Norwich on loan. I felt he might have got a Premier League loan, so that's a slight.
I'm surprised by that,
Yeah,
but I think I read somewhere that the coach at Norwich is somebody who's really highly rated. I don't know who it is, but I think that might be part of the thinking for him and for City. I think he'll end up being a Premier League defender as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you could see signs of it even in the preseason games, actually. He looked way more experienced than the young lads around him. And you could really see, which quite enjoyed, by the way, you can really see that McAtee and Doyle, they've been on loans. You can just feel it. And you get a sense of when a player is no longer just academy lad and they're a seasoned pro. And that's the feel I got from Doyle and McAtee.
I can see Doyle coming back to City. I think that being a left-footed ball-playing centre-back who played at left-back for Leicester as well, I can fully see a world in which he does another year's loan. If you look at the age of Ake, for example, as a natural replacement for Ake over the next 2 or 3 years, Doyle is... we're in a weird spot right now where I think that because of the age of some of the players in the first-team squad, I think there's a huge opportunity for a lot of these kids. If they develop in the right way, if they get the right experience... There's going to be ample opportunities for a lot of these kids, and it would be. I mean, because you've always loved this, like the idea that in your first team you can have 5, 6, 7 players from the academy. That's That's huge. It's really, really huge. The amount of money it saves you over a decade. If you look at the financial rules that are in place, if you're suddenly in a spot where I was thinking about this for Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne, right? So KDB, Bernardo, you would expect over the next 2 years will leave. But then Oscar Bob, Phil Foden, James McAtee, Claudio Echeverri, who's coming from River Plate next summer. I mean, you've got 4 lads there who you would expect 2 of them could replace the 2 senior players without really spending a penny. And I think that putting yourself in that position where you can succession plan internally, it'll be huge for the club.
Absolutely, it will be. And I think City know what they're doing. And I think this is why they're quite calm on this. I saw the goal Echeverri scored the other day. It looked absolutely, looked brilliant. And he's got Gallardo as well as the manager, hasn't he? So he's in the right place to learn. And I feel like the Echeverri comes to Man City will be a different one because of that returning manager than the one.
Absolutely.
Which is great. I feel like his development could just rocket now because he's got some of the most progressive managers and he really is a brilliant manager. So yeah, that's great. And I agree about Doyle. I mean, I think the telling thing for me for Doyle is that he's out on loan still. And like City don't see him in a rush to sell him. They like him. They know that he's got such natural ability. He's technically excellent. Like he can ping a pass Laporte style. And I think his crossy carries on developing as well because I do think there's a talent there. Let's go on to the ins, and it's just the one so far. Savinho, or formerly known as Savio, he's joined for around 25 million from our sister club, put it that way, Girona, the City Football Group side. We've obviously had a brief glimpse of him as well, but I think there's a lot around Savinho, which is interesting. The rumours that he's going to be challenging Oscar Bob for a right winger role, but he came on with his left foot the other day and looked interesting. And I think Savinho is an interesting signing for many reasons. It's a different profile. He's young. He's a Brazilian wonder kid, which is exciting. But also, I think he probably, with the Alvarez exit as well, and the squad looking different now, I think he's going to force how we play to change a little bit when he's on the pitch. And I find that quite exciting. What have you made of this signing?
Yeah, I think I am not a huge fan of Jack Grealish and Bernardo Silva on the left wing and the right wing. I think we've seen a lot of that. And I think that it has stunted our creativity and it hasn't really got the best out of Haaland either. Yeah. And I think that Guardiola was pretty clear in the press conferences that he's done in the last week, 10 days, that one, now he's got the option to play wingers on their natural side. He can play Savinho on the left and Doku on the right. 2, he just talked about how getting to the byline and getting crosses in is a great way to feed Erling Haaland. And I think 3, if you look at what he said about Oscar Bob after the Community Shield, he actually didn't criticize him, but said, the one thing that I think he has to improve is he has to be braver. He's so good at taking his man on. He's got to take him on more often. Yeah. He basically said too often he plays sideways or backwards. And I think that sort of encouraging the wingers to go at their man, basically saying, putting the marker down of if you're going to play in that position, you got to beat your man. Do you know what I mean? You got to be brave and you got to create things. I think that will naturally make us a more exciting team to watch. And I think it'll naturally get the best out of Haaland as well.
I have to correct myself. I said Girona. It obviously came from Troyes, not Girona. I don't want the Premier League on us there because that would be an illegal transfer. And it'd be 116 charges. I meant obviously come from Girona in terms of he's just spent a season there, signed in from Troyes, of course. It was a hard deal to strike that one. Very hard deal to strike for many reasons. But no, you're right. I do feel like the way what Savinho's going to bring, he's by nature, he's going to force Bernardo central and probably Foden central too. And I really like that. I feel like it's a natural progression of this team to essentially go back to wingers. You can play out wide, you can beat people. And like yourself, I was really encouraged to hear those words, encouraging Oscar Bob to beat people more often, be less passive. Because look, that's to me Guardiola saying, look, I already know you can do the pauser thing. I know you can pick the pass, and I know you can do that, but you're a devastating dribbler. Go for it, run at people, cause chaos, strike fear. And what he'll try and do is he'll try and make him overextend in that way. Then he'll find the middle ground because that's what you do. I always think in general, push someone with someone and they find the natural balance in time. Things always snap back to a more reasonable balance. And I think that's what will happen with Oscar Bob. And look, Savinho to me, look, it's exciting. It's an inherently exciting transfer. And I'm already impressed in that very brief Community Shield run out with his composure and how much he looks like a senior player. There was no nerves there. This was a Brazilian winger. His touch was excellent. His very first touch was Riyad Mahrez-esque when he brought the ball out of the sky. The way he drifted over to the right and played that reverse pass to Oscar Bob was just football intelligence. You know, there was a real understanding of the movement of those around him.
That pass gets better every time you see it. The pass to Oscar Bob, it gets better every time you see it. It's like 3 United players. He's taken 3 United players out of the game, and Bob's touch takes the 4th one out of the game.
It's so simple. It's so simple as well, but it's just knowing when to do it and knowing to go over there and overload with Rico Lewis on that side. And then you had a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 21-year-old on that side who created that goal for Bernardo Silva. And look, I think Savinho, sometimes a small transfer can force a whole squad to change. Like the knock-on effects of Savinho coming means now Foden's going to play central, Bernardo's going to play central. We're almost certain going to have a dribbler on each side, probably every single game. And I think naturally the expectation on Bernardo and Foden, De Bruyne will be different. And I think naturally the effect with Haaland will be different because he's going to have wingers, you know, doing cutbacks and whipping in crosses, and he can take a corner as well. Savinho, by the looks of it, you know. So I think this is going to be really interesting seeing a guy come in who's very willing to cross to a big man. We saw it last season a lot at Girona for Savinho. So I think it's a really exciting signing. But what about
it's I think one of the things that one of the not problems with Savinho, one of the perception problems with the Savinho transfer is the release clause. It's so low, and because of the fact that he's come via Girona through the CFG, there's not that natural excitement.
Yeah.
But if he played for Villarreal, for example, he'd be €100 million footballer, and it would be like the most exciting signing of the summer. I think if you look at right, that was the example I was going to use. Nico Williams. I think you look at Anthony. You look at the kind of the proliferation of even Isaac, who moved to Newcastle, who played primarily on the wing when he was at Sociedad, but he did play up front as well. But my point is just more that, you know, the fact that the release clause was so low, it's meant that there isn't a natural excitement. But I dare say that in 8 or 9 months' time, we'll all be sat around going, well, he's €100 million winger.
Absolutely. And I don't even feel that's unlikely. I think it's very obvious that some players are on a trajectory, and the only thing that's going to stop him is bad luck. Like Savinho, to me, looks like a guy who's going to the top. And look, I was actually looking at him statistically, and there's when you do those little kind of charts in the in the circle, whatever, I don't know what they're called, but either way, there's a lot of similarities to Vinny Jr. There really is. You'd be surprised, in terms of like the way he affects a game, and I feel like we've got. We look across to the Spanish sides and they get the Vinny Juniors and the Rodrigos and whatever. I feel like we've got one. I feel like we've got one potentially who could, become an elite winger here that we tend to see at Real Madrid or someone like that. And I maintain there's nothing more exciting in football, not many things more exciting than a Brazilian wonder kid. The other thing more exciting than that is watching academy players break through. And guess what? We're going to see that as well. So this is why I'm so excited for this season. I feel like it's going to be a lot of flair, a lot of fun. And look, we're going to see...
Oscar Bob and Savinho is just...
And then we're going to see at one point, mate. I think we'll have there'll be a day when Haaland's not there. So Oscar Bob will be at false 9. There'll be Doku on the left. There'll be Savinho on the right. There'll be Foden and De Bruyne with Rodri. And it's going to be like stupidly exciting. And it might be chaotic, but there's going to be so much. It's going to be electric. And I can feel it. And I've got a feeling we're going to attack so differently because these guys force it. So we will see. What about the players that we haven't brought in? Actually, do you know what? How big was keeping the likes of Ederson, KDB, and Bernardo? Because Ederson was going to go. It felt like he was going to go at one point. I thought it was done deal, but he stayed. Ortega signed the new contract as well, of course. KDB here for at least another year. Bernardo's still here. Is that important?
Yeah, I think in order of importance, I would say that KDB would be the most important, and then Ederson and Bernardo I think is slightly different. I really like Ortega and I rate him really, really highly. And I didn't really have the visceral panic that a lot of people had at the thought of selling Ederson, because I was like, we've got a lad here who's good enough with his feet and is probably a better shot stopper than Ederson. So, in the round, it didn't feel like a disaster to me if we'd have. And also, like, they were talking about 50 million euros, which is, I think, more than what we paid for him. So to have a keeper for like 7 years, for him to be pushing 30 or be over 30, and to then be able to sell him for more than you bought him for, I don't think it would have been terrible business had we sold him. But equally, I'm happy he stayed. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm certainly not of the opinion that we should get rid of him. Like, I have this natural tendency to dislike players who want to leave. So when it felt like, no, it's true. Like, you know, it's like one of them where it's like when the stories were like, he really wants to go. I don't think his performances in the US were good at all. I think he looked like a player
who had his head stinker, mate. Stinker in the US. Like, he was so bad.
He looked like a player who had his head turned. He didn't look focused. And I was like, listen, if you're not focused and your head isn't here, then you off your pop, bring the money, and you should just go. But that's kind of a natural, I think, some supporters, we have that tendency with players who want to go to just go, well, fuck him, I'm not that arsed. I think KDB had to stay. I always felt he was going to stay, and he had to stay. I think Bernardo, I want to see him centrally this season.
Same.
I think the kind of Bernardo on the wing thing, I think we're kind of done with that now, particularly with the wing options that we've got. But keeping, you know, the fact that you keep that nucleus of players together, and you have these young players who come in who have a little bit more space to develop, because there is strength in depth in those attacking midfield, attacking wide areas, I think is only a positive.
Absolutely, I agree, and I think everything that's happened plays into City this season really nicely. Like, I think I'm glad that all of them stayed. I think Bernardo, there's been less noise around him this summer. I think he's very much accepted his role, and I'm happy that I think he's going to enjoy his football this year. I think he's reasonably settled in Manchester for the first time in a while. Actually, I think he's just decided, like,
if his Community Shield performance is anything to go for, I think he's going to enjoy this season a lot, man.
I know this is a transfer section, but we definitely can talk about that a little bit, because Bernardo, mate, and I know there's been a lot of like noise around it, and he's annoyed some people because he wanted to go. But that, if you want to win people back, that is how you do it, Bernardo. Like, that was. I maintain a lot of that anger was just because it was his birthday, and like, he had no debt. I know he said it because he would kick the ball out, but I still think he was just fuming that he could lose the Community Shield on his birthday, and Garnacho was the reason. And I feel like he was just angry at him. And I think I love that side to Bernardo Silva. He's a little shit, and I love that, because I know I'm emotional that way as well, and I know I used to lose my temper when I was losing, and I think he knew that he just needed to kick someone and get a reaction. And I compared on Twitter a little bit of Roy Keane that way, and there is a little bit of Roy Keane to that, where sometimes you just got to get the crowd going, and that was the turning moment. It really was, you know. And Bernardo, yeah, what a legend! That celebration. He loves City, and he bloody does hate United, and he hates Liverpool too. So that's enough for me, mate. What about the players that didn't come in then? So what do we make any more signings for the end of this window? Because Guardiola's been uncharacteristically open. He essentially put out an ad in the paper for a striker. He's getting Gary goals in, you know, and we need to score.
You know what? Actually, he put 2 ads in the paper. He put one in for a backup striker, and he put one in for a midfield player. I think the point that he made, which I sort of understand, was when he sort of said, you know, whoever comes in, it's hard because Rodri will play every game that he's fit for, more or less, and Haaland will play every game that he's fit for, more or less. So I think that's why he made a point of saying, you know, if we're looking for a forward, we're looking for somebody who can maybe play centrally, but maybe play wide as well.
Yeah.
And the same for the holding midfielder. He said, you know, maybe we'll look for a holding midfielder, but somebody who can play a little bit further forward as well. That versatility gives those players more opportunities to start games. You know what? I don't have any reason to say this other than a gut feeling, but my gut feeling is City are going to end up signing a footballer between now and the end of the window.
I agree.
I just think that there's more games. I think that there's an awful lot of money sort of floating around at the moment at the club, just from the outgoings. I think that just from a general vibe point of view, it's good to sort of freshen things up and get a couple of players in. And finally, part of me feels like there's also going to be an outgoing still that we maybe don't expect. Like I've got a gut feeling that there's going to be an offer come in for somebody from somewhere that's going to go, oh, okay, that's going to suit all parties for that transfer to go through. So I think City will end up signing a footballer.
I'm interested on the exit because you look around and I don't even know who that could be. You'd have to be an awful lot for a lot of the key players. I don't see any key players leaving. Maybe a Nunes type or something like that.
Nunes, I think if I look across the squad, I think Nunes and Kovacic have got the potential to have offers and maybe get sold. I think Kovacic is harder because he's the only Rodri backup you've got. So I think you almost have to sign a player if you're going to let him go. And even then, I'd be really resistant to that. Nunes, yeah, I think it's possible. Alvarez, I felt was possible at the start of the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if there's an offer for Kyle Walker from Saudi. There's been a lot of talk around that. I don't know. Like I'm not sat here saying that a player will definitely go, but I think the market is going to be a lot more unpredictable than normal in the last 2 weeks of the window. I think that a lot hasn't happened, and I think there'll be a lot of clubs that will try and do a lot of business in the last 10 days. And so how that then affects City, we'll have to wait and see.
Look, we signed one of our best players on the last day of the transfer window in Akanji. Akanji was a phenomenal signing last minute. City are not against a bargain or recruiting if they need to. And I think when you look, we've lost Alvarez and Sergio Gomez. I mean, very different levels in the squad, but they are part of the squad. And technically, you could argue that because we sort of Gomez played in midfield a bit. We've replaced his squad number with Savinho or whatever. But Alvarez is gone. He was a guy who had an awful lot of minutes last season.
Yeah.
And I still feel like Guardiola doesn't 1,000,000,000% trust Nunes. I might be wrong there, but I just get the feel like he's all right. He's a good player. I don't think he's going to lean.
He's not at City. Listen, he's not at City's level. Let's just be honest about these things.
I know.
It's all right. Sometimes you can sign a player and you accept after 12 months, he's not good enough. We tried, but he's not good enough. And I think that Nunes easily falls into that basket. And I think that, I'd flip him. Like I'd be offering him out to Saudi, to wherever I could potentially get a deal from. And I think he's good enough and he's got Premier League experience. So I think that there is a world in which somebody comes in and City say to him, well, listen, lad, you're going to get the Calvin Phillips treatment. If you stay, you're not going to play very many minutes at all.
No, I agree. Yeah. I don't think Nunes is a City player. I think, and someone said in the chat, he's probably a Besiktas or Roma level, and that's not a bad comparison, actually.
Yeah.
I think he's a good player. I think he's a very good player, and he's definitely going to be the guy who flips between the UEFA Europa League and also then a lower Champions League player a lot. He's going to be that level, but I don't know. Our rates. The one thing I've realised watching Nunes and watching Phillips' midfielders is that our standards are geniuses. They're not very good players.
Yeah, I don't think like. I think that if you're going to talk about like the levels, right? Well, the levels are Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden. You start there, and then after that, the levels of Bernardo Silva, Rodri. I would argue now we're almost getting to a moment where you start saying, well, the technical levels, they're like Oscar Bob, Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Rodri. Yeah. Like these are guys who are technically some of the best footballers on the planet.
Absolutely.
And so, like, as good, you can be a very good player. We have a couple of very good players in our squad, but they'll never be that level. Like those, when you're looking at succession planning, when you're looking at, the next 2 or 3 years, which I think how you've got to look at transfers right now with the kind of the age balance of the squad, I think, you got to be next level to get into the team.
Nunes is 26 in a couple of weeks, and that's the thing is like he's a good player, but I feel like 26, what he is already. He'll get better, absolutely, but he's not going to be a transformational change in how he plays football. I just don't really see it in my personal opinion, and I think I don't want to just dunk on Nunes because I think he's a perfectly fine footballer, but our levels are geniuses, and that's what we should aim for. You could genuinely build two greatest Premier League 11s of all time, and if you wanted to, probably put just Manchester City midfielders in, and it wouldn't be stupid. And like
Easy.
that is the level. You go back to
Easy.
Yaya, Fernandinho, Rodri, De Bruyne, Gundogan, David Silva, Bernardo Silva, and these are all genuinely Phil Foden, like some of the greatest like players in Premier League history, and Phil obviously getting to that stage as well. But this is not an exaggeration. There's a league winning midfield there of any of those combination of players at any point. I just don't see Nunes as that level, and that's not his fault as such, and it's probably a bad transfer. So the long story short is, I do feel you're right. There's a potential if a good bid comes from City, to accept it in a heartbeat. There's a little tweet going on during this that City apparently still feel Nunes would be keen to join. Not Nunes, sorry, Bruno Guimaraes would be keen to join them. Do you think there's any hope of that transfer still, or is it dead in the water? I would love it still.
Who has said that?
It's from The Athletic. It probably is just a general news article, you know.
Yeah, it feels like a generally newsy thing. I'm so on board the Adam Wharton train. I feel as though I'm actually the driver of the Adam Wharton train.
I'm with you, mate.
For me, I think that if they're not going to sign Wharton this summer, I wouldn't sign another body. I'd wait a year and look. I think the thing with Wharton is that it's rapidly becoming Bellingham levels. And what I mean by that is there's a world in which Arsenal, Liverpool, United, Chelsea, City, all next summer want him, that everybody puts an offer on the table for him. And so I think it's Dom Smith at the Standard, who is very, very good with Palace stuff. He's obviously got good sources in there, and he did a story before the Euros saying that City have basically made it be known that they like Adam Wharton and they want him. And I think that where I'm at with him as a player is there's no way that you watch, for example, his performance at Anfield 4 months ago. There's no way you don't watch that performance and go, he's a City player in waiting. He's just that good. He's got that level. Like he's basically a number 6 who's got the quality to play as a number 8, who can play in tight spaces, whose intelligence and use of the ball is so good. And the way that the thing I like the most about him is he likes forward passes. Yeah. And he knows how to make them, and he can see them, and he knows the pass so what Rodri's got is he knows the pass that he's going to make before the ball gets to him. Gundo used to have that. He knows the pass that he's going to make before the ball gets to him. Adam Wharton's got a little bit of that. And I think that if you look at how much we value our centre midfield players in the way that we play, I think it's almost impossible that City aren't, like, if not at the front of the queue, certainly, close to the front of the queue in terms of talking to his agent, letting it be known that he's a City player in waiting.
Absolutely great. I'm all aboard that train as well. I think Adam Wharton, he's a footballer. He's a proper footballer, and he passes the eye test of, look, first and foremost, any signings at Manchester City making midfield now must be highly technical footballers. I don't feel compromised there. They've got to be the kind of guy that stands out because they're technically better than everyone else on the pitch. It always has to be that. And I think Wharton is cut from a very similar cloth to those players you just talked about. I do think there's a bit of it reminds me a bit of Michael Johnson, actually. And I was a big Michael Johnson fan. Yeah, and I loved Michael Johnson. I went to school with him and everything. And he was a couple of years below me at school. But I thought he was an absurdly talented footballer who was unfortunately derailed by bad luck and injuries and so on. But there's a little bit of that to him where you feel like he could have gone to the very, very top. And Adam Wharton has got that same football comes easy to him vibe. And I know a Blackburn fan, actually, and he was waffling to me about him a year ago, saying he's a genius and all this kind of stuff.
I know somebody who said to me that City have been sort of glowing about Wharton from his Blackburn days. That this isn't a case that he's moved to Palace and suddenly the scouts are going, oh, have you seen this lad? They've been talking about him for 18 months, 2 years now. So he's definitely somebody who they have like a deep body of evidence as to why the scouts rate him. They'll have tons of reports on him. Yeah. And now they will have seen him at Prem level over 6 months. Honestly, I would do it now. I know a few
75 million down. 75 million down gets it done, I reckon.
I've heard he's got a release clause.
Oh, have you now? Go on, cheeky.
I've heard he's got a release clause, right? And if it's true that he's got a release clause,
that won't be high.
Mid 50s.
Yeah, I'd say that'd be it, because there's no way you go from Blackburn to Palace and get a release clause of 80 million. It's
no,
be a lot lower.
It'll be mid 50s. And you know what? I've been thinking about this. It's interesting because Palace were quite good in terms of Elise signed a new deal, Eze signed new deals. Somebody told me that Dougie Friedman is very good at getting those deals done, but also putting in realistic release clauses. So it wouldn't surprise me if Palace are currently trying to get Wharton to sign it. If I was in Palace's shoes, I'd have sat down as soon as the season ended and gone, right, new deal, double your money. Yeah. We want 120 million pound release clause in there. I'm sure they're trying. I'm surprised they haven't announced it already. As long as they don't announce a new contract, I've still got one eye on maybe late in the window, City go, all right, you know what? Let's just do it.
I think we're in an era now where I'd be surprised if most very good young players don't have release clauses. I think we're in a release clause era, and it feels you look around and most of them have gotten one that we haven't heard about. There's rumors that Eze apparently had one as well, and all this kind of stuff. And there's rumors about Olise and everything. I think it's way more common than we realize, because the market is so absurd. The only way to really protect your future a little bit is have a release clause, which is a reasonable fee, that clubs can afford. Like if you had a release clause of 90 million, no one's going to pay it anytime soon. But it was 55. People go, well, actually, we would do that. Yeah. And I do think there's potential for that to be true, because if I was an agent, I'd be always making sure my players had release clauses. I would even say accept a slightly lesser wage, but you're going to protect your future if you go as far as you can.
And also, like I think right now you have to be cognizant of the fact that a year from now is just going to cost you more money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because if he stays there, if he's got a release clause, he'll sign a new deal because it's in everybody's interest, because he'll double his money and he'll get a higher release clause that he knows somebody will pay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if he's not got a release clause, just the natural ebb and flow of the season means that barring a bad injury, he will be whatever they're asking for now. You can add 40%, 50% minimum on top next summer.
Yeah.
And also, I'm kind of looking at it. So there's two ways of looking at this. One, you go, well, he gets another year of Premier League football playing week in, week out. Whereas I look at it the other way and I go, you know what? It's never too early to be coached by Pep. Like for me, if you've got the opportunity to join City, bed in for a year under Pep, the opportunity is. And the other thing is, so what is it? It's the World Cup in 2 years. Yeah. So next summer, do you really want to move in the summer before a World Cup? A lot of players will think about that and go, well, if I move and I move to a big club and it takes me 6 months to bed in, maybe I'm not going to be established first team regular.
Absolutely.
In the build up to a World Cup. So there's arguments to be made for, look, I'm telling you, I'm the train driver here. So I'm making every argument under the sun to get it done now.
I'm expecting the tickets made. Don't worry, I'm there with you. I would say in general, as well for City, look, I would, if I was City, and I don't know what Pep's going to be doing. I mean, they don't know yet. I really probably believe that. I would generally be trying to get any exciting signings in like that as soon as possible, because I feel like next summer would be a weird one if Pep moves. So I think a lot of people are looking at City and waiting. Don't get me wrong, with City, we'll still get great players in. But I do feel they've sat there and go, well, let's see what happens. Who unfolds? Who's a manager? Blah blah blah, etc. And we know how long these deals take to do. They start negotiating months in advance. So I feel there'll need to be a little bit of clarity around Pep's future. And I mean, like, get him in now, get him a year, and then even if Pep leaves in a year from now, at least Wharton's had a year, alongside of Rodri. So we'll see. Anyway, we're sort of pipe dream territory there, and I'm with you. But to be honest, for me, I've always maintained if we're going to sign a player now as a midfielder, sign someone who can start alongside Rodri. I don't want to back up Rodri. I want a guy who plays 6 and 8. Then when Rodri needs a break, you put that guy. where Rodri is and put Kovacic or Bernardo alongside him or whatever. That to me is the best way to deal with it. A guy who's ready, sharp, fit, and knows the role. Essentially, it's not a coincidence our best backup six was Gundogan, who plays every week as an 8 and understood how to be on that pitch and be out there. So that's where I'm at. That's why I think Bruno as well is a very good fit for that, because he would play alongside Rodri and do a very, very good job as well. So we'll see. I think there's a potential for City to splash the cash, because look, the money is burning a hole in City's pocket right now. And the graphic, which will be updated as this video goes out, finally on the big end of week compilation, will show that we bought in Liam Delap money as well and Michael Hamilton money. So there's like well over £100 million that's come in this summer, and City can spend big. So we will see how it goes. Ahsan, thank you so much for joining me for this part 1 of my big season preview for this coming campaign. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
Guys, check out 9320 podcast as always. It's wonderful. Head over to the 9320 player. Loads of wonderful stuff there. Loads of other content with the likes of Ahsan, Stefan, Lloyd, Howard, Steve, and there's other people I've definitely forgot. But it's wonderful, passionate content over there. And they're all brilliant. So if you like what Ahsan does, why wouldn't you? Check out 9320 podcast. There'll be, of course, a link in the description. And I hope you enjoyed this part 1 of the big season preview. There'll be another later talking about squad depth with another City content creator. It should be good one. For now, though, subscribe if you enjoyed this, give the video a like, and I'll catch you very, very soon for part 2. In a bit. Bye-bye.